Good morning, good day, good afternoon, year 9. I just want to check in with you before we start. Please make sure that you have a pen and paper. If you're working onto screen, that you are ready to go. Our very first activity is a mastery review session. So we're going to see 4 tasks appear. I'm going to direct you and just talk you through, and then you will copy and complete your responses. Okay, so let's have a little look. Number 1. Rhythmic means A, strong, regular, repeated sound like a steady drum beat or heartbeat, or B, the wearing down, something that's wearing down, oppressive, and without end. So number 1, rhythmic means A or B. Number 2. In a metaphor, what name is given to the imaginative idea? Is it the vehicle or the tenor? Number 3. Look at these metaphors. Okay, we've got 2 quite what we would say well-known common metaphors here. Can you underline the tenor and circle the vehicle in these metaphors? Or you can list it in your book. You can say the tenor equals, the vehicle equals. 4. Which statement best summarizes the poem so far? In this poem, Work, Sleep, the conflict is that work becomes an oppressive trap without end. Or B, in this poem, Work, Sleep, the conflict is that work is boring, dull, and meaningless. Okay, guys, so you can press pause here and go through and make sure you've got an answer for all 4. I wouldn't take longer than 4 minutes. Okay, so we're going to go for 4 minutes. For these checkpoints, you don't have to write down all of the sentences. You could write down 1, A or B, 4, A or B. Obviously, with number 3, you do need to write it down. But you can do short answers. Okay, so your 4 minutes starts now. Okay, so let's look at the answers together. Okay, number 1. Okay, rhythmic means that strong, regular, repeated sound, like a steady drum beat or heartbeat, that kind of da-dun, da-dun, da-dun. Now, wearing down, something that's oppressive and without end, was linked to that other word from yesterday, grinding. But both of these are creating that really negative connotation, that negative idea that work is strong. It's got a strong, regular, repetitive quality in this poet, in the life of this poet. And it's wearing them down. He's finding work oppressive and without end. So in a metaphor, what name is given to the imaginative idea? The imaginative idea is the vehicle. The thing being expressed would be the tenor. Now, I like that because a vehicle, it's a form of transport, isn't it? A vehicle. So it's like the imaginative idea is what transports us into a place of understanding. So number 3. Okay, now let's look at these metaphors. So which bit is the vehicle and which bit is the tenor? Okay, so time is the tenor. Time is the thing that's being described, and it's being attached here to the vehicle, the imaginative idea that time is a thief. So if we were looking at the ground between those 2 images, the connections, it implies that time steals, it robs from us. It takes something that isn't theirs to take. You know, that a thief steals, it's sneaky, it's stealth-like. So we could say that this is a negative representation of time, that this metaphor presents time in a negative way. Okay, look at this one. All the world is a stage. So give yourself a tick if you've got the vehicle as stage and the world is the tenor. So all the world is a stage. So the idea here being presented is that the world is a stage. It's a place where people perform and act. So it's a little bit of a cynical view of the world, that people are always acting and performing, that they're not always being authentic. And number 4. Now, this was the trick, because really both of these statements do summarize aspects of the poem. And sometimes when it comes to opinion-based work, responding to poetry, responding to any text from a personal opinion, it's really you getting to think, well, I would choose this because. Now, we could say that A has some stronger vocabulary choices. These are pretty impressive vocabulary choices. When it says that conflict is that work becomes an oppressive trap without end. So you might have gone for A because you like the language, that oppressive trap. It links us back to our starter there about grinding, that second word attached to meaning B, of something that's wearing you down and oppressive. But also, though, we did look, didn't we, last couple of lessons at these words like odium and tedium, and this idea that work is boring, dull, meaningless. So both of these have value, okay? And sometimes it's just the confidence to say, this is my opinion because. All right, so we're looking today then, moving on from that starter, still around this big concept of thing. And we are doing a real slow work through of this poem. I know sometimes we just want to move really quickly, get one poem, then get moved on to the next thing, but we are really taking our time. Now, I'm going to talk to you as you're writing down the title. How has the writer used language to focus us on the conflict and resolution in the poem? So if you can multitask, you could be writing that title while just listening to me. Now, there is a beautiful word that I love, and it's this word to ruminate, okay, or to chew over. So a lovely little less known fact is that cows have more than one stomach, because when a cow takes in grass, it chews it, it puts it, it ruminates on it. It goes through one stomach and then the stomach, second stomach. So it's making sure it gets every bit of goodness out of that mouthful of grass. Now, sometimes with poetry, because they're so short, condensed examples of language, we want to get through them quite quickly. But I love poetry as an example of how you can really ruminate on language. You can really look at the same poem and get so much goodness out of it. And that's exactly what we've been doing as a starting point for us, yeah? We're using this first poem, we're really ruminating on it and we're really thinking about it. We keep coming back and looking at it in different ways. And I'm not going to apologize for that, because that's a lovely, what we call the unpacking of language, and really enjoying kind of squeezing everything we can out of a poem. So we are still with our poem Work, Sleep, okay? But this time we're going to shift from thinking about the conflict of the poem, which is what we've been looking at so far, to thinking about how language is used to present the resolution. Okay, so that's going to be our shift of focus today. So we're going to do some checkpoints today. In other words, we're going to be thinking about some generic teaching around language, and then we're going to take it into the poem. Okay, now we know this from last lesson, so this is a quick recap, okay, that a writer can draw upon a variety of methods to help them draw attention to the key ideas and themes in a piece of writing. A method is a particular technique or device used to make the idea memorable and arresting. In other words, to get our attention and help us remember what is significant. So methods that we can include in a poem or other types of writing is similes. Now, there are no similes in this poem, so we're not really dwelling on that today. We have seen that a metaphor has already been used to focus us on the conflict and the problem of this poem. That's what we did yesterday or last lesson. Yeah, we really unpacked that metaphor for how it's focusing us on the conflict and the problem. We haven't got any personification, but this was just another example of a method. Now, we are aware that this poem does use repetition. It focuses on the conflict poem of work and sleep as the problem through the repetition. Now, we could tie in repetition here with that rhythmic idea, that something that is done repeatedly, it creates like a drum beat, a heartbeat. So we could be really creative and say that the repetition of work, sleep throughout this poem kind of creates the drum beat, the heartbeat, the life pulse through this poem. Alliteration, we're going to come on to that today. And really, we have already begun as well looking at choice of words. And we've seen odium and tedium as a very deliberate choice of words to again focus on the problem. But so far, we've been problem focused, haven't we? Not solution focused. And we are going to look today at the solutions. So as I read to you this poem, you can just see that I've highlighted already for us the solutions. Now, as I'm reading, I want you to begin the process of thinking hard. Now, you can split your attention a little bit because I've read you this poem before. And I want you to be thinking about, well, what solutions, what 4 solutions, because there's 4 bits highlighted, what 4 solutions are being offered, okay? Work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work. Ah, free me, please, with gentle ease from work, sleep, work, sleep, work. This odium, pounding tedium of my work, sleep, work, sleep, work. Just whisk me off to lands afar from work, sleep, work, sleep, work. That grinding train of rhythmic pain called work, sleep, work, sleep, work. Poor neural circuits fizzle and pop in work, sleep, work, and trying to make some sense of all this. Work, sleep, work, sleep, work. But hark, I see a golden gleam, a saving spirit of hope. You're fired, he screams. What news to bear this wondrous hangman's rope? So now I'm free, released from all this work, sleep, work, sleep, work. Eternal peace and rest for me. No, work, sleep, work, sleep, work. So I've highlighted already 4 solutions. Now this is going to be the first task that we're actually going to kind of deliberately put pen to paper for. Okay, so we have here the 4 words or phrases that I've highlighted. Okay, now what I want you to do, I don't want you to copy out the whole table. Okay, into your books, I want you to say, how does the poem offer resolution? And you can see here that we have 4 statements under the what. So under the what column, we've got 4 statements. Now the what is us identifying and summarizing the beginning part of an answer. Okay, so we read the quote, the line from the poem, and then we're going to summarize, well, what is the solution? Okay, then we're going to look at just whisk me off, and what we're going to say is the solution. Now I am going to just verbally give you some ideas, and I'm going to ask you to pause and write down in your book the 4 statements, what statements, but you're going to complete them using your own words and ideas. So our speaker says, oh, free me, please. It's almost like he's desperate, like he's begging somebody. Free me, please, with gentle ease from work, sleep, work, sleep. So one solution to the problem of work is, what's he begging for? What's he asking for? Good, he's asking to be set free. So one solution to the problem of work is to be set free. Okay, that's that first idea. Just whisk me off to lands afar. So what's another solution? Whisk me off to lands afar. What does that make you think of? What do you begin to imagine? So if I said, right, I would love to be whisked off to lands afar right now, what am I asking for? So another solution is to be ... How could you complete that idea? Okay, you're going to get time to do this in a minute. I just want you to ruminate, to be thinking. But hark, I see a golden gleam, a saving spirit of hope. You're fired, he screams. So actually in this poem, there is a resolution. The resolution for the speaker is that they are, what happens to the speaker in this poem then? Brilliant. What are they? They are, you're going to tell me in a minute. And then, so now I'm free, released from all this work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, eternal peace and rest for me. So the poem ends with the resolution as the speaker is. So what's that final image that we could say as the speaker is now free, the speaker is now at peace and has rest. So you're going to press pause. Now there are 4 statements here. Okay, and we have done some of the thinking together, but you have time for your own. So I'm going to ask you to give yourself no longer than about 8 minutes. Okay, so if you're spending longer than 8 minutes on this, it's too long. I think as well, because if you've listened well, you've listened hard, been thinking hard with me, you could probably do it a bit quicker. Just depends how long it takes you to write something. So copy and complete these 4 statements, and I will see you back here in about 8 minutes to move us on. Okay? Okay, guys, how did you find that? Now, I am not writing down any complete statements at this stage because I really want you to begin to move towards that confidence, that autonomy of having your own ideas. So one solution to the problem of work is to be set free. Another solution is to escape, to disappear, to go somewhere else. The resolution for the speaker, though, in this poem is that they are fired. But there's a lovely oxymoron here because actually, for so many of us, the idea of being fired would never be described as a moment of hope or a golden gleam. So our speaker is being quite different in his attitude towards work, isn't he? He's quite controversial. But the resolution for the speaker is that they're fired. And then the poem ends with the resolution is the speaker is free. They're at peace, they're at rest. Now, if we were thinking long term, if we were looking into your futures as GCSE students, there is something about this poem that does create scope for like a real kind of like a level 8, a grade 8-9 reading, which is the top kind of end of that mark scheme, or your grades at GCSE, because we think he's happy that he's free. We think that he's at peace and rest. But actually there is this irony of that little word no that suggests the solution is not as simple as it seems and is not as celebrated as it seems. There's like that little bit of tension, that little bit of disquiet within me. I'm not quite convinced. There's still this sense that no escape really exists for him. But we've done that. You've got your statements. Brilliant. So what are we going to do next? Well, we're going to just have some pit stop moments, okay? We're going to do some revision around aspects of language. Now, this is what I would call buy one, it's kind of like a buy one, get one free moment, okay? Yes, we need to understand this to talk about the poem today, but actually revision of language, understanding how language works has so much bigger benefits across all areas of English. Okay, fast forward, as I said, to GCSE, and there will be things that we're looking at today that will be repeated, that will be useful to you in the future. So the more we create a foundation of understanding how language works, the better we're going to be set up to succeed today, but also in the future. So we're going to do some little pit stops today. Now, the first thing I want us to think about is very particular to poetry, because actually in a poem, we sometimes have to ask ourselves, wait a minute, who is speaking? Now, we recognize that there is multiplicity. There are many different ways that poets speak. So I could write a poem and I could pretend to be, I could take on what we call the persona. I could pretend to be Queen Elizabeth. I could write a poem from the persona, the point of view of a murderer. That's a poem coming up soon. I could write from the point of view of a dog, an imaginative poem. So the who is speaking, we have to be careful because it's not always going to be as simple as the poet. So we know, love name, can't forget this poet is written by a guy called Mark Slaughter. Now we can't imagine that this is always Mark Slaughter, that he is speaking as himself. In poetry, there is great potential to take on many different voices, to adopt different voices, different personas. And that's one of the draws of poetry. You can temporarily be whoever you want to be. You can create personas and voices, but it is important to work out who is speaking. And one way that we can do this, okay, is to recognize that we can talk about a poem having a speaker, a voice. And with the poem, that comes through if it's written in first person. So in a poem, there is a speaker or a voice with the poem written in first person. But some poems might be written in third person, so there is no speaker, or there might be multiple speakers, okay? But we're going to just think about this idea of who is speaking. Now, this is a line, we've just seen it, "Oh, free me, please." Okay, so in our poem, there is a clear voice. There is the voice of somebody speaking to us, a speaker. Now, I've said we don't want to assume it's Mark Slaughter. He could be taking on the persona of somebody that hates work. He could be taking on the persona of somebody who feels trapped by the oppressive work regime. But we know that there is somebody speaking to us. Now, it's okay in poetry to say, but we don't know anything more than that. We don't know if it's Mark Slaughter. We don't know if it's a male, a female, but we could say the speaker, the voice in the poem is talking to us. And how do we get there? Because we can use pronouns. So this is our little teaching point as well, that pronouns help us to work out whether the poem is written in first or third person. Now, pronouns are words that are used to replace nouns. So, for example, I, we, they, he, she, it, me, and you are all examples of different pronouns. So in a minute, guys, I would like you to write down the red. Okay, so who is speaking? And we're just going to write down a definition that pronouns are words that are used to replace nouns. For example, I, we, they, he, she, it, me, and you. Okay, now our pronoun choices will create either a first, third, and sometimes a second person response. So first person are words that is created through the use of words like me, I, we, me. These are all what we call first person pronouns, okay? Now, third person pronouns are pronouns such as they, he, she, it, okay? In the third person, there's a sense of detachment, there's distance, okay? We're talking about somebody else, something that's happening to somebody else. Now, second person, okay, you, there you go, that you creates the second person. You are talking directly to somebody. So just as a quick checkpoint, so which pronouns out of these would be used to create a first person voice, a first person persona? Brilliant. If you said I, we, and me, you're right. So guys, I just want you to pause there and I want you to write down that pronouns are words that are used to replace nouns. For example, I, we, they, he, she, it, me, and you. Okay, brilliant. Now, for this part of the task, again, I don't want you to copy out the table. You can just do this in your notes, okay? But I want you just to think about, we're going to focus in on the how part now. Okay, so we've done the what's. So in each quote, I'm going to direct you to look at a particular area of language. So it says here, how, which pronouns are being used. So if we look at the first quote, oh, free me, please, with gentle ease from work, sleep, what pronoun would we have to write down as being used? Brilliant, me. So we just make a note, me, okay? Now we're just using notes. We're going to turn our notes into sentences in a minute. So I just want you to write down me. What about this one? Just whisk me off to lands afar. What pronoun's being there in that second solution? Good, we've got me again. Brilliant, so write down me. What about the pronouns being used here? But hark, I see a golden gleam, a saving spirit of hope. You're fired, he screams. Now, sometimes there's going to be more. You can see there's first and third person pronouns in this quote, but what are they? So just give yourself time to write them down. So now I'm free, released from all this work, sleep, eternal rest, peace and rest for me. So first thing I want you to do is just pause and just to make sure that for each quote you've written down the pronouns that are being used. Right, did you get them? Good. So actually we can see across this poem we've got the repetition of me. Me's being used. Now me is that first person, but actually it's what we call a little bit of extra for the cheap seats at the back, people that get a little bit excited about language like me. When we talk about me versus I, okay? I is when it's the subject, when you're focused on the subject, the main idea is all about I. So it's quite egotistical, I. When you're talking about me, it's actually presenting yourself as the object. So there is somebody else that's responsible for doing something for you. Help me. Free me. Listen to me. But I'm trying to direct your attention to me. So when he's using this me, free me, whisk me, rest for me, he's actually creating an invitation, this idea that somebody else has to be responsible for the action. Now, what do we infer by that? Well, he can't do it for himself. There is something about this trap of work and sleep that he is powerless to break out of by himself. He needs somebody else to do it. He needs somebody else to free him, to whisk him off. Okay, now let's have a look. There are the I's. I see, I'm free. So there is a change when the solution comes in from me to I, but also he introduces the you and the he, because we get a little bit of embedded speech, don't we? A little bit of dialogue in this poem. But hark, I see a golden gleam, a saving spirit of hope. You're fired, he screams. Now, guys, who could the he be? We have to use our imaginations here. Who could the he be? He has the power to fire him, so he's likely going to be good, a boss, an employer. And the fact that he's screaming at his employee, the guy that works for him, you're fired, suggests, how does he feel about this guy? Is he pleased with this guy's work? Is this a promotional moment? No, we've got an angry employer. We have an employer, a boss that's angry, that's disappointed, that's frustrated, and is saying you're fired. Okay, brilliant. And we've got the I'm free. So now I'm free. Brilliant. And eternal peace and rest for me. Okay, so these are the pronouns. Now we are zooming in on language to give us the how, to help us think about how this poem ends. So one solution to the problem of work is to be released, to be set free from it. He uses the first person pronoun me to invite us, or to invite somebody to help him get out of the trap of work. So beginning to bring our ideas together. So we're going to just do a little bit of shared writing. Now, as it comes up on the screen, Okay, you're going to get to make a choice for this one. You just have to decide which is the best word. Okay, so the poem is written in the first, second, or third person. So what's our first choice going to be? Brilliant. So everybody write down, the poem is written in the first person as the speaker is sharing with the... Okay, now it's a poem. So would we talk about another writer? Would we talk about a reader, or would we talk about an audience, do you think? Yeah, audience probably would be more likely if we're talking about a play. So we can talk about the reader. Okay, so we're going to just say reader. So the first person is, the poem is written in the first person as the speaker is sharing with the reader their struggle with work. Brilliant. However, the speaker in the poem does seem to be asking other people to help them, suggesting that they cannot. So why is our speaker using this me? Why is he speaking to other people and saying, free me, whisk me? What does that suggest about our speaker? It suggests that they cannot. So you're going to copy and complete that statement, okay? Now I'm just going to let the idea hang. I want to see what you come up with this. So, however, the speaker in the poem does seem to be asking other people to help them, suggesting that they cannot break the cycle themselves, free themselves. Giving too much away. What would you come up with that one? And the third person reference to he introduces a who offers the solution of being. Okay, so who is the he? When he says he screams, can you remember what he said? So the third person reference to he introduces a... Good. So we've got, maybe we talked about it a little bit earlier, didn't we? That maybe it's introducing a boss, an angry boss, an employer who offers the solution of being able to... What can that boss do? What does he do? You're fired. Brilliant. Okay, so now we're starting to see and link the pronouns to the resolutions. Okay, so the resolution or the resolution we're offered is that he's fired, but he needs somebody else to do it. So he cannot help himself. He cannot free himself. This trap, this rhythmic, this grinding train of rhythmic pain is not something he can get off for himself. He needs to be helped. Brilliant. So guys, I want you to pause and make sure that that paragraph is written down. And that is our work for today. Okay, so I will see you tomorrow for for the next stage of looking at the language. Okay, guys? Thank you.